Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello, good evening. I'm Tamsin Roberts. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has hailed a new era for growth as he announced the largest series of tax cuts in half a century. As part of the government's mini-budget, Kwasi Kwarteng told the Commons he plans to abolish the 45% top rate of income tax for the highest earners. He also said he'll bring forward the planned basic rate reduction from 20 to 19 pence from April next year. The major spending package also includes cuts to stamp duty and the scrapping of the planned increase in corporation tax. The Chancellor says today's a good day for the UK.
We were facing a situation where the tax burden was at a 70-year high, and that was completely unacceptable. The Prime Minister campaigned for the leadership on the basis that we were going to reduce taxes, and that's exactly what we've done. The path we were on was simply unsustainable. We couldn't simply raise taxes indefinitely and hope that we would get prosperity. That's why this morning I reduced the tax burden across the piece, and I'm very, very committed to that.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the mini-budget is nothing new.
Can I thank the Chancellor on his comprehensive demolition of the record of the last 12 years. Their record, their failure, their vicious circle of stagnation. The Chancellor has confirmed that the costs of the energy price cap will be funded by borrowing, leaving the eye-watering windfall profits of the energy giants untaxed.
A second teenager has been arrested after the fatal stabbing of a boy in West Yorkshire. 15-year-old Hyrie McLean was killed outside his school in Huddersfield on Wednesday. West Yorkshire police say a 15-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the death. Yesterday, a 16-year-old was arrested on suspicion of murder. Both remain in custody. King Charles has been photographed for the first time with his red box. The picture, which was taken last week, shows the King carrying out official government duties in the 18th century room at Buckingham Palace. Red boxes hold papers from government ministers in the UK and the realms, as well as Commonwealth representatives. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's time for Headliners with Mark.
Many thanks, Tamsin, for another largely accurate bulletin. Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Mark Dolan, your first look at tomorrow's papers. We try to have some levity on this show. Helping me do that are two of the country's finest comedians. Apologies, it's Steve N. Allen and Scott Campero.
Every time.
Every time. It's an oldie but a goldie. Chaps, great to have you in the studio. Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages. And we start with the Daily Mail. And they lead with at last a true Tory budget. Top 45p tax rate scrapped and penny off income tax. Stamp duty slashed, rise in levies on beer and wine shelved. New dash for growth in biggest boost for 50 years. It's a big fat thumbs up from the Daily Mail. The Telegraph, Kwarteng gambles on biggest tax cuts in half a century. Britain back at its boldest, writes Alistair Heath in The Telegraph. This revolutionary budget adds up to the greatest I've ever seen. Obviously enjoying the fact that beer has got very cheap when he wrote that. Down to business. Prince Charles, now King Charles, of course, attends to his papers, sitting behind an antique French mahogany writing desk in the 18th century room at Buckingham Palace. There you go. The King at work. What a heartening image after 2 weeks of deep sadness. The Independent next. One of the greatest writers of our time. Warm tributes flooded in to Wolf Hall author Dame Hilary Mantel, who has died at the age of 70. She had a stroke and she won the Booker Prize, which is the top prize in fiction, twice, and her book was, her series of books were adapted for television as well. Robin Hood in reverse, say The Independent. Truss's tax gift to the rich. Highest earners to reap benefits of biggest cuts in 50 years. Pound plunges as markets alarmed by PM's gamble for growth. Guardian next. A budget for the rich. Kwarteng's 45 billion tax cut package sends pound dashing down to its lowest level against the dollar in 35 years. Tax cuts, super rich laughing all the way to the actual bank, say The Guardian. Jonathan Freedland. The Tories have made a declaration of class war. FT now. Pound slumps below $1.09 after Kwarteng's tax cut gamble. And City dealmakers keen to see if Chancellor's love will last. There you go. He's obviously enjoying a honeymoon period. Could it turn into a divorce if these tax cuts don't pay off? The Times now. Truss's great tax gamble. Biggest cuts package for 50 years. Boost for highest earners. Sterling falls amid borrowing fears. Also, the royal rift. Harry, Meghan and the palace insiders who really know what happened. Exclusive extracts from a new book by legendary royal reporter Valentine Lowe. Daily Express. Chancellor's tax cut package to put our incredible country back on top. We've got the courage to bet big on Britain, says The Express. Coming out fighting Kwasi Kwarteng last night stood by his tax cuts, saying he will never apologise for having the courage to bet big on our incredible country. The Chancellor's mini-budget bonanza aims to fire up the economy and end a cycle of stagnation. Also, a concerning story on the front page of the Daily Star. Mendy trial. Grealish slept with woman on same night she was raped. England footballer Jack Grealish had sex with a woman on the same night she was allegedly raped by a friend, a fellow Man City star Benjamin Mendy, a court was told. The player, the footballer Jack Grealish, is not implicated in this particular alleged crime, simply linked to what happened allegedly on that occasion, and the trial continues. Not amused, breeders charging £6,000 for Queen's favourite dog. Rough stuff. And those are your front pages. And let's start with Saturday's Daily Mail. And Scott, there's only one story in town. It's the budget.
Yes, that Reagan's ghost arises, that people cannot let go of the trickle-down theory, which is my favorite theory on a first date. But I think in terms of the economy, I think it's dead and has been dead for a long time. I think they're going to struggle.
Well, tell us about
these economic options.
First of all, you're far too young to remember Ronald Reagan, aren't you? You've had to look him up.
No, thank God for Reagan. That's the only reason I could afford to go to university at the time, right? Because I pretended my father was dead, and Reagan gave me money. He felt bad for me. The Bank of England is fighting an annual inflation rate of 9.9%. And I think the problem with these policies that Kwasi's put forward, he's looking back at a time when the U.S. struggled with similar interest rates during Reagan. And he said, look at how well they did by 1987 in the U.S. That's what we're trying to do here by cutting taxes. The problem is the UK currency is quite weak and doesn't support what he's trying to do. I think what's about to happen, actually, is interest rates are going to continue to rise. We're going to see them not just stay where they are, not just stagnate, but go up probably to about 4.5% by 2023 in this country. And what they're trying to do is a supply and demand thing. They're trying to stop people from buying and get people to save. But if people have no money to save and can't afford their mortgage, what they're about to create is a real problem for working class, middle class families, I think, who can't pay their mortgage and can't even, are going to have to choose between heat in the winter, which they're already terrified about, and putting food on the table.
What is this so-called trickle-down economic theory as championed by Ronald Reagan?
It's a Ponzi scheme. What it's meant to do is, if you cut taxes to the wealthy, which they're trying to do here, and they're cutting price caps as well, they assume that people that have money will spend it, and that as people spend money when they're rich, that will, they'll open businesses, they'll, fund other sorts of things that will create jobs, create work, and everyone benefits. The problem is they found in the 80s with Reagan is his cronies, as well as everybody else in America, when they had money, they saved it, or they put it in offshore banks, or they did other things with it rather than be beneficial to the rest of the society. People are basically greedy, is what the lesson of trickle-down proves us.
The idea of this, though, Steve N. Allen, is that you attract wealthy people to this country and you keep the wealthy people that are already here, so they buy their Ferraris and go shopping at whatever the posh place to go is. and 65% of our economy is based on consumption. So if everyone's got a bit more money in their pocket, they'll spend it, and then we get growth.
So, well, you've just spent all of that paragraph describing stimulating the economy and then flipping at the end talking about growing an economy. Not necessarily the same thing. And during a time of inflation, what you don't want to do is put heat into the economy, which is stimulating it. So the Bank of England are spending their time slowly creeping up the interest rate to try and take some of the heat out of the economy.
Slowly? Every 6 weeks?
But as in the percentages, though.
Spot the man with the mortgage. on a flexible
He's got
rate.
a tracker.
You should have fixed, baby.
I know.
I know. But this is, I'm happy at the moment because I fixed. But give me 2 more years, and all of a sudden it's going to be a serious issue. But
the problem with these fixed is the moment in economic history when you come out of the fixed rate, and it's going to be very ugly for many in the next couple of years.
Oh, I mean, that time I even fixed into my gas prices. So, like, for the next year, I'm just going to be making jokes left, right and centre. But after then, but let's not get off it.
I might start a GoFundMe page for you.
Yes, a slightly similar website, different spelling. But this is the thing. This whole story is conflating stimulating the economy and growth. So the Bank of England is spending efforts to try and stop inflation by stopping the economy growing so quickly. So of all the times to be borrowing money to make the economy grow, you're trying to inflate an air mattress when someone's letting air out the other side, which means you will be racking up debt to less effect. Even if there is effect, if there's growth, it will be less growth than it would have been if it wasn't done at exactly this time. To have the Bank of England and the government pulling in different directions is annoying. And also, this is definitely the end of austerity, and some of us are thinking, why couldn't we have borrowed and grown the economy back when it was the 2010 painful version?
Yeah. Also,
Britain
is a lot of Britain's income comes from trade, and this is going to make exports a lot more expensive and a lot less attractive to other countries. The cost of buying a British product is going to cost a lot more.
Well, let's talk about other countries now, because the FT reports on the tumble in the value of the pound, Steve. So whilst many of the papers are celebrating the news of this tax-cutting budget, the global currency traders are not having it.
No.
And neither are stock markets around the world.
And again, this is just happening all the time, the conflating of issues. I understand why people like this as a policy, but that doesn't mean it will pay off in the way that they're saying. I'm sure loads of people who are earning 150 grand are loving this. But if you want to try and measure it, get some metrics. FTSE had a massive dip. The pound went under $1.09. The cost of borrowing has increased because of this at a time when we're increasing our borrowing. That's a double whammy of pain. Yeah. So if you're looking at it just in terms of what the financial situation is, it's not looking great so far, although admittedly this is knee-jerk reaction and markets do their two-phase reactions. There's a thing there we didn't predict, and then they can analyse it. But the cost of borrowing going up is going to make it more painful to be borrowing, and it's not just about borrowing to fund the things that would have been funded by tax. The energy crisis has been solved by some borrowing. Let's borrow some money to fix a cap, which means we're effectively the government's borrowing money to give it to fuel companies. But they're not going to windfall tax these fuel companies. It will come to us, but not the people who are earning over 150 grand. So someone's going to pay for this at some stage, and it doesn't look like it's big companies or people with loads of money.
Well, there is already a windfall tax, and it's 60% of those extra earnings. So it's a question of not having yet another windfall tax. And then this is the idea when it comes to not having a windfall tax and also lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses, is again attracting businesses and individuals to the UK. I mean, nothing beats having those people here rather than living and working and spending their money in Paris or Dubai.
But you know what happened with the bonus cap? It's just their salaries increased so that the bonuses... They still took home the same amount of money, but it was distributed differently. Now, you could make an argument that having bankers get higher salaries means they could be sitting on their hands doing nothing. But they also don't take the risks. Because if most of your money is coming from a huge bonus because it's uncapped, well, then why not take a massive risk? Because if it pays off, you're going to get yourself a big bonus. If it doesn't pay off, relatively recent history tells us, don't worry, someone else will bail you out.
But here's the million-dollar question, Scott Capurro. Do you want millionaires leaving Britain? I would argue you don't.
I don't think they're going to leave Britain. I think they like to live here for other reasons, not just their income. They like living
The
here.
weather and the food.
There's that too. And the charm of the TV show hosts, right? And,
also, British men, I think we can agree, are hot.
To a certain extent, yeah. It depends on the time of day. I also think, I wonder, we borrow this money from who ourselves? I mean, can we just let it go? All the borrowing, can we just say, you know what, don't worry about it?
I know.
Just...
Wouldn't it be, I think if the world leaders could just have one meeting and go, should we just press zero on all of this?
Yeah.
But all of those people who were saying, in fact, earlier on, you were saying a return to the Thatcherism way of doing things. They were never unfunded and borrowed for spendings. It is not the Thatcher way to do this just by borrowing and going for it.
Fair point. Indeed so. Well, look, let's now have a look at a big international story, and it's in Saturday's Mail. Major protests in Iran continue. Scott, this is a huge story.
Well, apparently Iran has turned into something of a war zone in terms of protests. The unrest has bubbled and built over because of the death of Mahsa Amini, 22. She was arrested by police near a metro station in Iran because she wasn't wearing her
hijab.
Yes, I think it was more than just the hijab, but she was not dressed appropriately as far as the police were concerned.
Right.
And they put her in a van and they beat her up, and she was sent to a hospital, and she had a head injury and blood leaked into her lungs. She went into a coma and she died. The police are saying she had a heart attack. She was 22 years old with no health issues whatsoever. The family want to know what's going on. The story leaked into the press, and women are burning the hijabs. They're burning all sorts of things, all their outfits. They're burning their hair. They're cutting their hair off. They're shaving their heads. They're losing their minds. At least 26 people have died in these protests in at least four major metropolitan areas in Iran. People are very angry about it. And then recently, just yesterday, a video circulated of a man in, I think it's Tehran, getting off his small motorbike, walking over to a woman who wasn't dressed appropriately, slapping her, getting back on his bike at a red light, thinking he could get away with it, and all these men jump on him and start beating him up. So it's affecting the society, and not just women in the society, but men too, more liberal-thinking men, more progressive men, obviously, don't want to see this thing happen and don't want to see Iran looking like a Stone Age country, which it is not. They were not really necessarily... The people that arrested her, we are assuming, were police, but the people that went after her for the headscarf thing were this group in Iran, and I underlined it, and I can't find it now, and they're called the social, something about
the morality police.
The morality police, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not armed police, but they, kind of travel around looking for people who are breaking rules. And this is what happened, so.
Deeply disturbing, and yet precious little hope that the regime will change its attitude.
Well, maybe I'm more optimistic because I wouldn't have predicted any of this. So I would have been wrong a few days ago. So hopefully that pessimism is wrong going forwards. I mean, in some ways, it's great to see people standing up to this level to oppression. I mean, the red flag is if you've got morality police, red flag already. I mean, reading some of the ways they've been talking about trying to, I can't remember the quote about suppressing these wrongdoers, these protesters. When do you work out that you're the bad guys? When you've got morality police and you're killing people for not wearing a thing?
Well, it's a theocracy, isn't it? And I saw one of the religious leaders on television speaking about the difference between discussion and protest. And he said, we can talk about our ideas, but the minute it becomes, people waving banners and people hitting each other and people yelling, then it's no longer discussion. And I think in his mind, he thinks that a conversation between men about the way women should behave is completely appropriate.
And it's tragic because there is footage of Iran in the 70s when it was a free country and women were just in, Western dress and they were free. And this country seems
I think calling it a free country in the 70s is there's an argument about,
that's it, but it's certainly, certainly from the values of the West, it's moving backwards.
Well, it seems, based on this case, this situation, that, women have less control over their own lives. I mean, she's being detained for a re-education class. They're going to teach her how to dress appropriately. And instead, apparently they broke her jaw and killed her. So
absolutely appalling and tragic story. Let's hope those protests lead to a positive outcome and potentially change. Let's look at Saturday's Telegraph and homes for Russian deserters, Steve.
Yeah, Germany. They say they're preparing to take in Russians refusing to fight in Ukraine. Interesting and maybe bold, because the last time Germany said we welcome migrants, how did that pan out for you? But they're preparing to take in the deserters, they've said here, sparking a mass exodus of men of fighting age are trying to leave Russia because it's not going well. All of a sudden, Putin needs more people. There was a story yesterday about it where one of the wives of a fighting age man had been interviewed, and she said, like, I would not let him be conscripted. I would not let him go. I would break both his legs. And I read that and thought, why both?
Exactly.
Just one.
Well, that's wives for you.
Yeah. One is for so you can't go to war, and this second one's because of how you stack the dishwasher.
Yeah, exactly.
But, it's interesting. Let's hope that this manages to make it even harder for Putin to continue to try and fight this losing war.
Most certainly. Would you take in a Russian man?
Well, I did see some volunteers on the border of Poland and the Ukraine willing to adopt. A couple of gay couples had adopted a 22-year-old Ukrainian, and they were bringing him back to the UK to live with them.
Charming.
He had blonde hair and blue eyes.
There you go.
I thought, well, if you could, clean up around the house.
There you go. If you're watching, if you're a Russian deserter, Scott will take you. He'll fling his doors open. He just needs a photograph first, just to make sure that vital statistics. On to Saturday's Guardian, and it's good to know that the Foreign Office is spending our money wisely, Scott.
On hair. Apparently, data has been showing recently that the Foreign Office is spending up around 45% of an increase on items ranging from dining, wallpaper, and adult coloring books.
It's not adult, it's not like adult.
Not the kind I like. Oh, right. No,
colouring in that. I've run out of pink.
The adult coloring books actually were bought for 900 quid from a company called Calm Over Chaos, and they're meant to be providing wellness to some of the people that work in the office. They can color away their dreams and color away their hopes in a coloring book. And some money was spent apparently also on furniture. And some decor brands from White Company and restaurants. And they've been asking, the Labour Party has said, what's this money being spent on? And Liz Truss's people in the Foreign Office saying, it'd be too expensive for us to tell you. It would cost us too much money to write the list out.
Don't mind
strategy. It's brilliant.
Before,
yeah, exactly. So no one really knows the details. We're still waiting to see why and how. Although apparently in 2018, Liz Truss, when she was Chief of Secretary of the Treasury, she gave a football shirt from Norwich City to a U.S. official in Cleveland, trying to encourage a football team there to relocate to the UK. So maybe there's a strategy behind all this. Maybe there is gifts to people to try to get them to kind of...
But one of them was spending on getting your hair done, which admittedly was not a problem we had when Boris Johnson was the Foreign Secretary.
But it was maintenance and not fashion.
Oh, hair maintenance?
Yes.
What is hair maintenance when it's...
You're asking the wrong...
I think more of a barber coming in and cutting everyone's hair at once so everyone looks the same. They're looking for uniformity, which we certainly have not achieved amongst us three, obviously.
But wellness, though. Wellness can be expensive, because that's like the Gwyneth Paltrow Goop brand, where you can... I think it's like 80 quid. You buy a candle that smells like she smuggled it or something. I'm not sure.
Oh, I see.
But, yeah, that's
You can buy a genital ashtray.
Really?
What does a genital ashtray...
You have to buy one to find out, I think. That's why it's so expensive.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I'm actually wearing one right now, and I've never felt better.
It's smoking.
And it's just as well, because it's time for a break, so it's time to fill it up. We've got lots more to come in part 2, including counter-terrorism on conspiracy theories, groundbreaking treatments, and doubts over the future of grammar schools. See you shortly.
Nice ash.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio,
and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Well, I've removed the ashtray. Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers in the company of the truly brilliant comedians Steve N. Allen and Scott Capurro. Let's go and have a look now at Saturday's Guardian and doubts about Liz Truss's plans to revive grammar schools, Steve.
Yeah, this is the social mobility czar who's said that grammar school revival might not be the way to do it. And again, I'm going to go back to my theme of the evening. We're conflating two issues. So Liz Truss wants to bring them back, but not necessarily saying it's about managing to bring about social mobility. And there's good evidence that they don't help social mobility. In theory, of course, they would. It's a school that you take a test. So if you do well in a test, you must be clever. There you go. But in a society that's got money, anyone who can spend money to give your kids the advantage to get into that better school, all of a sudden the system starts to break up and become less even.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what it's like in Kent. So as a nation, we don't really have grammar schools, but Kent still has them. You can't build new ones, but new ones effectively opened up when they built annexes to previous grammar schools in like a different town. That's building a new school, but they managed to get under. It's not as if Kent is this like homogeneous land of absolute fairness. You still have the posh people of Sevenoaks, and where I used to live, Gravesend, let's be honest, I'm aware I was not posh. So I can see how the idea of a grammar school will not bring about social mobility, won't make things more of a level playing field. The only way to do that is to have education where every school is good. As much as I hate to quote Michael Gove, we need every school to be above average. That was a beautiful one when he said that, wasn't it?
It's a great
guy who knows maths.
You mentioned the social mobility czar, Catherine Birbalsingh, who's the head teacher of a very successful state school, a free school that she set up in West London. It serves some very deprived communities, and it takes kids who I think in other schools could even be described as problematic or challenging students and gets them into Oxbridge. I don't know if you know too much about the school, the Michaela Community School, I believe it's called.
Right.
So she's the head teacher of this school, and it's a state school. It's based on tough love. So essentially very, very strict rules in the classroom and behaviour, and you've got to sit up straight, make eye contact with the teacher. It's almost like the army. There was a documentary about it on ITV. But therefore, it's not a grammar school. It's just a really, really strictly run state school based on traditional educational techniques. So do you think that's the way to go? And is that what Birbalsingh is saying? You know, why is she so down on grammar schools?
Well, I think there's a fundamental flaw with what will happen to society if you have grammar schools. If you have this split moment where some people will go on to that faster stream and others won't, what's going to happen? Give it 10 years. You're not bringing about greater parity. Whereas the school you've just described, there is, and as I was saying, you just need all schools to be better. You need a school that doesn't think, you know what, we'll get rid of the slower stream. We're not focused on that. Let's really focus on these ones. The idea of a tough school that is tough for everyone, that brings everyone up to a certain standard, that is where you'll start to get social mobility from.
Scott, how does it work in the States?
I don't remember. I was smoking weed throughout my entire high school education.
By the way, that's not even a joke, is it?
No, and I had chalk thrown at me by my teacher who called me a cherry prep and told me to take my sunglasses off in class. That's all I remember.
Very showbiz.
But I do recall something about testing being really important. And I think some kids, in terms of grammar school situation, some kids do not test well. They panic. And I know that I tested well in certain subjects, so I went on to university, even though I hadn't done very well in high school. And some kids I thought had done very well kind of peaked when they were 16. And when university came around, they couldn't progress. They just didn't do well verbally. So I think what the school you described, where it sounds as though they try to find in a student what is good in that student and deal with them individually is the only way to do it, really. That's why I know people make fun of, those schools, those liberal schools in California and San Francisco where kids, paint with their fingers and stuff till they're 12 and they haven't learned any. I mean, I think it's a great way to get kids to express themselves is through humanities and through the arts.
Well, yeah, and those sort of very liberal schools are very successful if the area is affluent, because they come from successful families, well-heeled parents who can afford to give them extra tuition and get them through.
You're looking at me like that's where I'm from. And I was from some sort of area sort of like that.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough to be. But I do remember feeling kind of apart from other people in my class because I just feel I could feel them as the test times rolled around. They knew they couldn't keep up.
Yeah. Did any of your teachers find out that you would become a movie star and top comedian?
Some of them have tried to take hold of my coattails, but I'm constantly batting people away.
They're taking credit.
It's impossible. Yeah.
Especially the one that threw chalk at you.
He's the one I had a crush on, of course. The one who abused me.
Isn't it always the way?
Very complicated.
Tough love.
Yeah.
OK, well, on to Saturday's Sun newspaper. Medical miracles, Scott. Tell me more.
Well, apparently they're injecting people with herpes. Now, why do I get the herpes story? A, and two...
education.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with that cold sore that Steve's got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lay down. Apparently, they're eradicating cancerous tumors by injecting the tumors themselves with a herpes virus known as RP2. It showed signs of effectiveness in a quarter of patients who had advanced cancers. Now, this is a small group of patients. I think here they said that there were 9 patients that they focused on, and they had a few different cancers: skin cancer, head cancer, neck cancer, esophageal cancer. 3 of those 9 patients saw improvements. 1 patient saw his tumor completely disappear. The other patients said that their cancers did not progress. Their particular cancer at least did not progress. Brilliant. And they're literally taking an injection of the herpes into the tumor, and the tumor bursts from within when it's injected. That's the result they're hoping for, actually. And they find that this releases the brakes on the immune system and increases the body's ability to kill cancer cells. And this has happened before, hasn't it, where they have had medications for one thing that they found treats something else. They had no idea, I mean, I think Botox, which they use now to kind of treat one thing in people, was constructed to do something else. That's just one example.
Oh, it's a poison, isn't it? Botulism.
And it's meant to kill the nerve, to make the nerve stop working. And so
But this isn't a medication. I was going to say, this is not like a medication that they found a second use for. Herpes is not a medication, is it?
No, right. It's a modified version of the virus itself.
I find it medicinal.
But this is why, this is the good thing about science. Not the science, because we all know what people get like, but science, because we have such a great understanding of certain viruses. And herpes is something that's been really well studied. So much so that now you can start to modify the gene of it and get it to attack other things. In this case, tumours, there are the phage viruses where they can design viruses to attack bacteria. So when you have no ability to fight a bacteria because your antibiotics are gone, the idea of a phage virus, the trouble is they have to be very specific. So as soon as the bacteria evolves slightly, you're back to square one again. But this technology is because scientists know viruses.
No, it's because Star Trek came up with this. I saw the episode 2 nights ago, and Spock went blind, and they had a light that they shine into his eyes, and his sight came back. Just one particular light.
Well, this is amazing. Do you know what I think we need, boys? I think we need maybe like a lab somewhere that just manufactures new viruses. Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But this actually is from one, though. As much as you try to diss it, all of those people with cancer.
Listen, Wuhan is not bad. I actually got herpes when I was there, but I enjoyed every minute of it. Let's have a look now at a less positive medical discovery, Steve, in the Guardian.
Yes. If anyone's watched, there's a film called Dark Waters. Mark Ruffalo's
Very good
in it.
movie.
It's really good, isn't it?
About awful companies that pollute a community water area.
Yes, with these polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Excuse me?
They're known as, how
Nice
dare
try,
I say
Steve.
that? How dare I say that? But these, because fluorine is that's the weird one. On the periodic table, that is as a gas, it will rip your arm off, but as soon as it's bonded to something, it's a really solid bond. It's a good, proper covalent bond. But these chemicals don't degrade, so they are around forever. So
and they're used, for example, on saucepans and things like that.
Yeah, things like non-stick saucepans.
Yeah, back in the day.
Even some dental flossers. If ever you wanted a reason not to floss again, there it is. So they're used because it's a really handy way of making, a little bit of organic chemistry. But the problem is because they don't break down, they then stay in us. And by the end of that film, you learn that a huge percentage of humans have it in them. But it's
98%.
So we're drinking water from plastics. We're doing stuff. But this piece of research is saying that they found these chemicals in umbilical cord blood in 40 studies. It's not as if the kid had a chance to try and avoid the chemicals. Just by being born, or not even born by this stage, just by being developed in a womb, these chemicals are already in your blood supply. It's disgraceful, and there's not really much you can do about it. What can you do? I mean, you eat, but it's in the food that you eat. You drink, and it's in the water.
It's because wombs are dirty. We need to have more kids in test tubes. I think that's the only solution.
Well, that would be the way to go. I think that's exactly right. It's interesting, isn't it, that we are always, aren't we, Scott, guinea pigs of science. So
we're doomed.
Food additives. We might be sort of similar generation. When I was a kid, food additives were really popular. That it was great news that your bread would last for 2 weeks. And they would actually have a label on the bread that said, with added preservatives, as a selling point.
Yeah. Or you could squeeze cheese out of a tube and it was bright orange, and that would last forever.
Yeah,
it's great.
and we
really
loved
good.
it. We didn't really think the consequences through. And it's the same with non-stick. It turns out it's not good for you. There's the plastic. So you now have these bottles, plastic bottles, which are BPA-free. So that means that we had BPA before we had
for a
BPA
long time.
free.
We're not BPA-free, but the bottle we're drinking out of it. My mother said, when she was younger, in the 1950s, of course, that people thought science was good and was going to help things. And now people see science as going to kill us.
Let's just bring back that last story again. Herpes curing cancer. Scientists do that. Before we totally say all scientists are evil.
Well, I bred a lot of herpes, though. I had a hand in that, so to speak.
So I've heard. I can give you my top tip, which is I always worry about the non-stick because non-stick always gets sticky, doesn't it? It loses its Teflon quality, and I always think you wind up eating the pan.
Yeah.
Because you have these little chips on the pan. In fact, it's probably in you now. Ceramic. Have you had a ceramic pan?
Interesting.
Yes.
Marvellous.
Yeah.
There's a company called Tower. They're very good. There's other brands, I'm sure. But that's our most reliable solution. It's got a ceramic pan. It's been going about a year now, which is longer than my marriage.
I've gone ceramic iron. Absolute glides, no sticking.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, the ceramic plate.
You've changed.
Yeah.
We barbecue.
You've gone all showbiz.
We barbecue on a stick. My husband's from Brazil, so we just light a fire in the park out front.
Stop gloating.
Well,
stop rubbing it in. I know you've got an amazing life. Steve and I just muddle on with our ceramic pans.
You're going on and on about it like old women.
You've got a hot Brazilian.
You both sound
flipping
crazy.
Steaks on the barbecue, turning shrimps.
You could do a steak on the iron. It's ceramic.
Stuffed sausage on heat. Nothing beats it.
Yeah, the best meat in the world.
Saturday's Times, and is this the government that's confirming all of those conspiracy theorists? Steve, you're a big fan of conspiracy theories.
Yes, well, so they have. Oh, I love them. I actually honestly do spend way too long on social media arguing with people who still try and convince me that the Earth is flat, because I think, I'm up for this. Go on then, why not? And you think, I'll win this argument. What about gravity? Gravity tells you why things should collect in a spherical shape. And honest, I've had arguments with people who say gravity doesn't exist. Wow! If you're the Wile E. Coyote level of arguing, surely you've lost it. But so the government's flagship Prevent Anti-Extremism programme has used material that talks about conspiracy theorists and suggests that there are questions over the circumstances of the death of Princess Diana, and also what are the other questions? Jeffrey Epstein, did he kill himself? JFK, what was going on there?
Yeah.
But to be fair, you read the whole story, it's not like this is officially sanctioned Prevent material. Someone that they'd hired on a freelance basis showed them this. There's a pyramid.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, of conspiracy.
But JFK killed himself? Is that what you just said? I'm sorry, I missed that story. JFK.
It was a very magic bullet.
Really? He was really limber. JFK, a yoga student, I guess.
Well, I've actually got it here because I think it's quite an interesting. It's an interesting pyramid, and it's got a sort of gradation of. Oh, there it is. Well done, Sophia. You've got graded levels of conspiracy. So at the very top is detached from reality, the bonkers stuff.
Dinosaurs didn't exist. Essential oils cure all illness.
There you go. Sandy Hook fake, which a commentator is now actually, being pursued in the courts about. Flat Earth, Bill Gates, microchipping, a Holocaust denial. Who could deny that? But
is monkeypox on there?
Do you know what's on that list? COVID-19 made in a lab is on one of the levels.
Yeah, but it's actually
Mark,
it's on a lab. It's on a section which says dangerous to yourself and others. I mean, you must admit that the idea that this virus might have accidentally leaked from the coronavirus research facility, which is based in Wuhan, that we can't rule out that's where this virus may have come from.
You know when you watch
That's not kind of crazy, you've lost the plot, the Queen's a lizard sort of territory.
You know when you stand at the shore and you watch a ship sail away, what do you think happens to it? I'm worried about you now. You can just see it just because your eyes aren't good enough?
You would accept that it's a perfectly sensible line of inquiry that COVID leaked from a lab that works with, develops, experiments on, and studies coronaviruses. The coronavirus lab of Wuhan. Do you think maybe we could
question? Well, I tell you what,
could we consider the tiny possibility that a line of inquiry at least from?
Well, that's what I was going to say. That what I would consider is it's just on the wrong slice of the triangle because one above it is that questions can be asked. Because the thing I'm always in favour of, you can ask a question and the answer can be no. Because we seem to live in this world where if you ask a question, people will be, oh, how dare you even ask that? No, it's fine. It's a question. It's done to elicit further information. That I'd agree with.
Yeah, that's it. I think the issue with it, look, it's free speech. This person can publish this. That sort of triangle is a bit like a newspaper article, isn't it? It's an opinion column in which this is their view of what a conspiracy theorist is. But, OK, Holocaust denial, a few other bits and pieces, just crazy and also deeply offensive. But what about other things on that list that might move around in terms of credibility?
That's the point. The purpose of the pyramid is to show that there are different levels of conspiracies. It's not really to list which ones are in which section. Same as Maslow's pyramid of needs. You can argue about what goes where, but the interesting thing is there is a hierarchy of needs. There's a hierarchy of conspiracy theories. Argue about what's on which border. But that's an important...
But wasn't the hierarchy designed to show people what that person thought were the more dangerous conspiracy theories and the less dangerous, right?
Well, absolutely.
That's a hierarchy in that pyramid. And he put 5G somewhere in the middle there, and I think 5G is quite terrifying, actually. It might be the end of the planet at some point. That's what I think.
Let's find that science one again. 5G's just...
I'm totally kidding. No, I know. But I don't believe in India. I don't believe in conspiracies. I don't think people are well organized enough to come up with them. But I do have friends who I love dearly who say, oh, I've seen the video of Hillary with, the prepubescent girl and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. It was a video, for one thing. How old are you? But also... do you have any critical theory left in you whatsoever? But I think people spent a lot of time alone over the last 3 years, and it made this kind of idea expand.
Well, no, definitely. And there is dangerous misinformation out there.
A lot.
There are lies. We mentioned Holocaust denial, which is a deeply offensive and horrific and wrong thing. But in Germany, Holocaust denial is illegal. In the UK, it's not illegal. It's just deeply offensive and wrong. And I just think in relation to these conspiracy theories, you have to let people go on YouTube and offer their arguments as to why the Earth is flat, rather than sort of, deplatform them and just say you're not in this conversation. I think that's how you expose the nutters.
Yeah.
Let them have a platform. But then again, others would say, no, we're in an era now where actually the authorities, including censors at YouTube and elsewhere, think, no, the public need protection from it. But I'm not sure they do.
It depends. I was just in the US. A large portion of white Republican men, over 50%, think that Biden is not their president, that Trump is, and that the election was stolen. And I think we're going to see some more violence and some more catastrophe over the next 2 years, especially in the next election. And I think more people are going to die because of it. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at and maybe curtailed, that sort of
Well, there you go. Well, that's it. It's a fascinating conversation, but no conspiracies here except to give you the best stories from tomorrow's papers. And so coming up, we've saved our best till last. How maybe being a tortured artist isn't the way to succeed.
woke mocking comics, and a snowflake boss. A proper GB News segment to see you into.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I told the officer I wasn't driving the car at the time. Welcome back to Headliners in the company of the highly talented comedians Steve N. Allen and Scott Kapoor. And lots more to get through. In fact, chaps, let's see if we can manage this. Sophia will be very proud. We've got about 6 or 7 stories before 12, and I'd love to kick off with this one. And it's Saturday's Daily Mail. Could Vincent van Gogh have actually kept his ears?
Yeah, turns out, yeah, who'd have thought? This is bad news. The story is tortured artists making their best work is a myth. That actually, you don't have to be a tortured artist to be producing, which means my career needs a rethink. It's, you know, I thought my depression was helping, but it's just a waste of my own time, which, if anything, makes me more depressed. Yeah, cutting off his ear might not have helped Van Gogh. I mean, certainly didn't help him wear his glasses. Maybe he would have been a bit sharper with some of that painting.
I agree. I mean, inaccurate is a polite word.
Yeah.
He never listened to me. He never listened to me. You know, and the thing, look, there are other artists, like Monet, lived till he was 87 and was incredibly content living in the same town for a very long time. Lovely marriages, lovely wives. The most productive of all the Impressionist artists.
Hundreds of paintings, thousands.
But I think it's really easy to understand why we have this trope. It's a fun trope.
Yeah.
So you've got your two painters, one who has a great life. No one's talking about him. But the one who slices the ear off, there's a story. So it spreads as this, the idea, this concept. It doesn't have to be based in reality, because the more exciting story is going to win.
It is true.
Romantic.
I mean,
it's romantic.
Well, yeah, you're right. It is romantic. And people stopped listening to Monet when he was still alive. And when he painted the rooms in Paris for that museum, no one went to the opening. His son organized it after he died. People weren't interested. It took about another 30 years for Monet to be rediscovered.
Well, after dying?
Yes, because then people weren't so concerned about his happy life. And people do ask me as a comic all the time, you know, comics suffer, right? You're miserable. Is that right? That's why you're funny? That's your self-defense mechanism. And I mean, some are miserable, but it's not a necessity. And when I first started as a comedian in San Francisco, it was in an LGBTIQ plus vegan restaurant/cafe that I started. Shall I say that again, or are you already?
You did very well.
But it was a very supportive atmosphere, I'm saying. And through that supportive atmosphere, a lot of comedians kind of crawled out from under and within the woodwork from under rocks, because they felt there was a place where they could do what they wanted to do. Artists need to be supported, actually. It's the opposite, really, of what that Van Gogh story talks about.
I mean, and the research says that the opposite is true, that actually they look at the personality types. You can analyse personality types using the big five: ocean, openness. I'm going to list them all, it's boring. But the neurotic side of it, that actually, if you are feeling more positive, you produce better work. So it's not true that you need to be in an ear-slicing mood to do your best stuff. So if anything, my misery is just value added, it's extra.
Well, we all enjoy it. Don't change a thing. And by the way, your wife's just left you. Now, Saturday's Telegraph. And should bosses trust their employees more, Scotty?
Well, apparently not. Many bosses, 4 out of 5 bosses, are worried that their staff, when they stay home, are not being productive. A survey of 20,000 staff from Microsoft found that while most employees, 87% of the employees interviewed said that they were more productive, 80% of the managers disagreed. They wanted the employees in the office the way Apple has demanded. They're calling for employees to return to the office. And Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, has said that he wants all his employees in the office working 40 hours a week. But employees themselves claim in all those companies, including, again, the Microsoft-owned LinkedIn, that they do better at home, left on their own device.
It's telling, isn't it? Can we talk about a rather dramatic story in the world of tennis?
Oh, right.
Chaps, tell me about this. What's happened there? Because
well,
it's
at the Laver Cup,
Express, isn't it?
Yeah, at the Laver Cup, that famous tournament with the black courts, really beautiful, and maybe that's why this was viewed so much more easily. A fan walked out who was a protester, they say now, but I'm not so sure. He set his arm on fire. And then there's footage of him trying to pat the fire out, screaming in pain. He'd be dragged off the court. And they waited about 15 minutes before they continued the match, out of respect for his burned arm. But I think he might have been lighting a joint, or lighting the second joint. I think he was just lighting something, maybe a cigarette, and caught himself on fire, perhaps. People do these things sometimes.
Have you ever witnessed accidents whilst on stage, in the crowd? Anything dramatic happen to you guys?
Well, I hit a man in the head with a mic stand recently in Sacramento, in California. He was talking during my set. You know what that can be like. So it's just a few months ago. I was just there in June, and I flipped his baseball cap. But you have to be careful with, though, when you leave an urban area and go to the smaller parts of America, you find a lot of people on various drugs they make in their home. And he came out of his chair at me, and I took the mic stand and I poked him in the belly, and he fell back. And then another man leapt out of his chair and started beating him up, and then security got involved. Americans, any reason for a
But let's be honest, it's a reminder not to mess with Scott Capurro when he's on stage.
Well, yeah, I get real
ultimate
tough.
put down.
Were you playing tennis recently? Is that what happened there? Someone got in your way?
There's no protest. The man has made no statement. So I think it was just an accident, really.
Steve-O.
Very hairy arms.
On that rather fiery note, let's talk about Saturday's Telegraph and a new celebrity on the scene.
This is interesting. So the story starts off being about firebrand strike leader Mick Lynch becoming a TV personality. He's going to be on Have I Got News for You. The rest of the article goes into quite a lot of detail about some of the jokes they did about the Queen's funeral. And already we're in this territory of, I don't like the idea of newspapers putting jokes out of context to see, does this bother you? How about this one? Do you think this one's out of context? Well, the whole,
isn't it?
Yeah, unless you're there watching it. I mean, it's a TV show, so you can sit down and watch it. If you're not in a gig, then you shouldn't have a say on what the jokes are, because there's the opt-in. Surely by now you know what Have I Got News for You's like, and if it's not your cup of tea, don't watch it, but then don't read about it in a newspaper and then go, I think it's disgraceful.
I completely agree. I think it's so bad taking any joke out of context. It's not just that you don't have the context, but you don't have the tone in which the joke was said.
Yes,
also is key.
I mean, people love the show. The two comedians on it regularly are icons. They're brilliant. They know what they're doing. There's no point pretending that they're not funny. Also, it's a show based on news stories of the week. So if they hadn't talked about it, that would be weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, the joke I read here that Merton told, I think is really funny, even in print. So I think some people just want to bring the BBC down.
Can you utter the joke? Would that be a mistake?
Oh, no, it just says Paul Merton, who's sitting next to Mr. Lynch in a satirical show, was talking about the internet, people... forget it. No, I can't.
It takes some setup because it's line added
well,
on
listen,
some other people's.
I would take Scott Capurro over Paul Merton all day long, baby. By the way, if you're not sure what Have I Got News for You is, it's basically a panel show based on. It's a cheap rip-off of Ministry of Offence, which is the hit GB News panel show hosted by Steve N. Allen, and the best of which is back tomorrow. Please watch it because he's on a significant repeat royalty. Drinks
Thank
on
you,
him.
equity.
OK, how about sticking with the Telegraph? And cancel culture strikes again, Scotty.
Oh, well, there's a comic that's very famous in the US, all around the world, called Dilbert. It's a fixture in US newspapers, and it's in 77 newspapers in other countries.
And it's that little comic strip that you get on the back of newspapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really popular, and it's in 18 different languages and thousands. Anyway, so
it's iconic, isn't it?
It is. And Scott Adams is the writer and the illustrator, and he created a character named Dave. It's set in an office, and it just makes fun of office politics. But they introduced a character named Dave, who is black and identifies as white. And Adams thinks this was the beginning and the end for the cartoon because he's making fun of, woke behavior, again, in an office. And it sounds pretty funny what he was doing, actually. And 77 newspapers that were carrying him dropped the cartoon. Lee Enterprises is the company that owns those 77 newspapers. They said it was part of a larger overhaul, but this illustrator, Scott Adams, believes that he was reduced to zero.
So you can have your satire, but only if it fits the woke orthodoxy.
Well, I don't really know what the word woke means, to be honest with you, because as I just described that comedy club I started in, it's very difficult for a lot of those LGBT performers to work in the mainstream. Now it's not difficult at all. Now, actually, it's preferable. So in many ways, that woke agenda has benefited comedy and the arts.
But if it sees this guy essentially cancelled, an iconic cartoonist who lampoons office culture and is now lampooning political correctness within the office culture, which is, certainly prevalent in some institutions, surely that's not right, Steve.
It's difficult to know if that's what's happening, though, isn't it? And we'll never know, because either this is just... If this story had been a comic strip that had ran for decades, comes to an end... that happens. Yeah. A comic strip that's about office life when fewer people are working in offices made that story.
Steve, I've got to pick you up on this. That sounds to me like that is the classic argument against cancel culture, which is you're imagining it, it's not happening.
No, I'm not, but I'm not trying to say that.
It's pretty clear that his sort of the anti-woke thrust of his recent work has got him cancelled.
Oh, I don't know if that is clear. So I've read the whole thing trying to work out, is there a sign that proves it? Because what you might be doing...
not on the back of newspapers anymore.
No, but you've just done the classic confirmation bias. So you've got a conclusion and you'll find a piece of evidence that fits
there's no press release announcing that he'd retired and that he'd asked for the distribution of his work to no longer be in newspapers.
But that's not... So false equivalence, false dichotomy is what you've just done. Fascinating. So
I think we're back
false.
to cancel culture isn't happening.
But what
it's very
you've
common.
done, you've found something that's observably false and said, well, it's either that or my point of view, so it must be mine. So it's a false dichotomy. The other one is confirmation bias, that you know what the answer is, and look, this evidence fits it. Well, that's like me saying, I know that God's caused thunder. Hear that thunder? I just heard it again. I'm definitely right. You can't draw a conclusion.
OK, what if, hypothetically, he has been cancelled for the sort of anti-woke flavour of his comedy? Would that be a problem?
Yeah, I think it is. I think if you're buying a comic strip and you're buying the material, you should know what that writer does. You should be happy with it because it's entertaining.
It's odd because he said this is affecting this artist's income, but he runs the cartoon in 57 countries in 19 languages. It's only 77 newspapers in the US that's been removed. So I'm sure he's
Tellingly, in the US, I wonder whether certain sensibilities are different there in the world of American publishing. Who knows? Don't forget, America is the home of sensitivity readers. But look, can I tell you that these two will never be cancelled? My thanks to the brilliant Steve N. Allen and Scott Capurro. We're back with more headliners tomorrow at 11 and Mark Dolan tonight at 9. Thanks for your company and see you then.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Friday Night Feast. And we don't want to ease you into the weekend, no. We want to crash into it like a couple of TV stars jumping a queue.
Taxi! Taxi! Yeah, can I have a taxi, please? Excuse me? What are you... Excuse me, what are you doing? I need a taxi! Excuse me! Sir!
There's lots more of that coming up, and we'll have all of our regular features as well. Tonight's Challenge Christie's is an absolute cracker. Find out what happened when I was put through my paces by a genuine footballing legend. Dog of the Week is back as well, and tonight we'll try to find a forever home for gorgeous Georgia. Look at those eyes and tell me that you don't want her. There you go, OK? If you don't want her, then you're an evil person. Please, please rehome one of these dogs. I'll tell you about the lorry load of sex toys that caused chaos in the United States, and we'll speak to the man who has fathered, get this, more than 50 children, and he's not stopped yet. And there's news as well, of course, of the woman accused of drink driving who claimed that her dog was behind the wheel. That's all to come after the headlines, brought to you this evening by the wonderful Tamsin Roberts.
Patrick, thank you. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has unveiled the largest series of tax cuts in half a century as part of the government's mini-budget. Kwasi Kwarteng told the Commons he plans to abolish the 45% top rate of income tax for the highest earners. He also announced he's bringing forward the planned basic rate reduction from 20 to 19 pence from April next year. The major spending package also includes cuts to stamp duty and the scrapping of the planned increase in corporation tax. The Chancellor says today's a good day for the UK.
We were facing a situation where the tax burden was at a 70-year high, and that was completely unacceptable. The Prime Minister campaigned for the leadership on the basis that we were going to reduce taxes, and that's exactly what we've done. The path we were on was simply unsustainable. We couldn't simply raise taxes indefinitely and hope that we would get prosperity. That's why this morning I reduced the tax burden across the piece, and I'm very, very committed to that.
Well, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the mini-budget is nothing new.
Can I thank the Chancellor on his comprehensive demolition of the record of the last 12 years. Their record, their failure, their vicious circle of stagnation. The Chancellor has confirmed that the costs of the energy price cap will be funded by borrowing, leaving the eye-watering windfall profits of the energy giants untaxed.
To other news now. Russian-backed officials in 4 occupied regions of Ukraine are holding self-styled referendums on joining Russia. The so-called votes are taking place over the next 5 days in 4 regions across the south and east of the country. These regions represent around 15% of Ukrainian territory. The referendums have been denounced as illegitimate by Ukraine and the West. Russia argues it's an opportunity for people in the regions to express their views. A second boy has been arrested in connection with the murder of a teenager in West Yorkshire. 15-year-old Tyree McLean was fatally stabbed outside his school in Huddersfield on Wednesday. West Yorkshire police say a 15-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the death. Yesterday, a 16-year-old was arrested on suspicion of murder. Both remain in custody. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's straight back to Patrick.
Yes, welcome to Friday Night Feast, everybody. Now, we want to bring a little bit of light and humour and all of that to your Friday evening. But before that, I did actually want to get stuck right into something that I care deeply about, and I know that you do as well. I am sick and tired of political correctness. I've had enough. While everybody is tripping over themselves to make sure nobody is offended, the country is going to the dogs. There's going to be an inquiry into what's happened in Leicester and in Birmingham, where essentially race riots kicked off unabated while a small number of police pretty much stood back and watched. We don't need an inquiry into that, do we? The answer is staring us right in the face. Mass, largely uncontrolled immigration has led to foreign problems becoming problems over here. When you couple that with a law enforcement body that's terrified of causing offence, then we end up in a very dangerous situation. My guess is that the inquiry will end up pinning the blame on police officers or some poxy taxpayer-funded community initiative, not doing enough to recognise the specific needs of different racial groups, which meant that they couldn't intervene sooner and stop all of this. That is not the solution. The solution is drilling it into certain groups of people that they simply cannot behave that way in this country. We do have a British culture, we do have a British rule of law, and that must be adhered to. It's such a cop-out to keep having inquiries into things. We had an inquiry into the Manchester Arena bombing. No need for much of an inquiry there either, was there? Our police force is simply not equipped to deal with the sheer level of Islamist extremism now on Britain's streets. Let's have an inquiry into grooming gangs, shall we? Well, no need for one there either. Right across the UK, in my opinion, police forces have been too afraid to tackle the monumental issue of largely South Asian men raping vulnerable working-class white girls on an industrial scale. Now, when it comes to Leicester, how many times do we have to see this kind of thing erupt? A version of the exact same thing. A teacher at Batley Grammar School showed a photograph of the Prophet Muhammad to a group of school children. There was a mob that turned up from all across the country, making threats to kill that teacher. We do not have blasphemy laws in this country. The mob should have been dispersed and people involved arrested. Instead, the police shoved the teacher into protective custody and his job is called into question. There is a mob patrolling the streets of London calling for Zionist Jewish blood, for example. The police just stood by, didn't they? A primary school in Birmingham wanted to teach kids not to bully gay people. And then all of a sudden that's interpreted as them wanting to teach kids how to be gay, and predominantly Muslim parents launched a big protest outside. Police don't want to stoke racial tensions. How many times have we heard that? But those racial and religious tensions have already been stoked, haven't they? Those protests, demonstrations or riots are racial tensions being played out on the streets of Britain. And it's the police's job to stop them. It's too easy to blame fake news spread online or just a few extreme voices. But firstly, if you add up all the just a few extreme voices, it becomes quite a lot of people, doesn't it? And instead of blaming fake news, why don't we blame people gullible enough to take it as fact and then take an extreme reaction to it? Political correctness is getting in the way of policing. It's getting in the way of the vast majority in the media shining a light on the true scale of the issue we now face. And it stops ordinary members of the public, like you and me, having a reasonable discussion and a debate about what some of the negatives of mass immigration can be. Men, women, boys and girls have fought and died for Western liberal values to remain in this country. The fields of Europe are red with the blood of those who did so. And one of those Western liberal values is tolerance. And tolerance is a great thing. But too much tolerance could well lead to capitulation. And I'm concerned that we may well end up being so tolerant of unacceptable behaviour, tolerant of perceived cultural differences, that we end up losing our Western liberal values and our country once and for all. Right, well, we've got loads coming your way on Friday Night Feast. Make sure you get in touch on that, GB Views at gbnews.uk, because we'll go to those in post-person Pat later on. But I'm joined in the studio this evening by Housewives' favourite, Will Geddes. That's right. And also the man you warned your daughters about it, the one and only Aidan McGee. Lock him up, I say. But, yeah, I just wanted a little bit of your reaction to that, chaps, what's been going on in Leicester and Birmingham. Will, I'll start with you. You are, of course, a security expert, and there's not been much security going on there, as far as I can see.
No, I agree with you. I think there's just way too much tolerance for sort of unacceptable behaviour, and I think there is this line that, unfortunately, the police have been treading over gradually. It's almost like a mission creep into not really reacting and responding, and it's not really fair, to be honest, to the vast majority of police officers who actually work really hard and really want to achieve their aims. But it's the higher-ups who never really did the hard graft on the ground that are then putting these initiatives in place and basically handcuffing them from doing their job.
Exactly. Aidan, are you sick and tired of political correctness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it affects every area of our daily lives. In terms of immigration, the immigration levels are where they are and where they have been because over the last 30 years, and particularly from about 2004 when Tony Blair opened the borders completely with European integration, the levels are where they are because governments, successive governments of all parties, civil servants are absolutely happy and content with where they are. It's been a choice over that period of time. Now more than ever, with boats coming in on small boats, we've seen the last few weeks, 30,000 a week, I think it is. That's a town the size of Sevenoaks, arriving every 7 days. We've got a serious problem here. I'm hoping if any good comes out of these riots in Leicester and Birmingham this week and across the East Midlands, hopefully that will crystallise the problem and finally make governments do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the extortionate amount on an annual basis that you're alluding to there is absolutely vast. And I think we can't underestimate the shifts that's going to have in, I think, British values and this country's ideology.
Yeah, and I think, but also at the same time, and you guys are very good at making sure you get your story straight, which is why I come on with you guys a lot. But I think a lot of the mainstream media have to be very cautious about doing their own speculation and interpretation of what's going on. And what's going on in Leicester at the moment is a little bit more, from what I understand from friends of mine in the Asian community, a little bit more simplistic than perhaps is being reported in the news. So I think we've got to be very careful that how it's reported isn't going to incite even more sort of either anti-immigration or anti-Asian community sort of sentiment.
How do you mean, Will? Do it by a bit more simplistic?
Well, simplistic in terms of, you know, it's not necessarily a religious-born sort of conflict, as far as I understand, in terms of the Hindus and the Sikhs, in terms of how they're reacting. What I'm hearing is it's on a much more community-based level, and it is localised to Leicester. It's not something that we're seeing across the entire country. It is purely in Leicester, and I think it's very important that people don't start trying to make news by fabricating it or speculating beyond what actually the reality is. Keep it on mission.
It is tricky. Just before we move on from this, one final point from you, Aidan, is I am worried that police officers, in some police officers that is, are too afraid of causing offence.
Why would you? Why would you when you're on a middle-income wage? You're standing on the edge of a riot. Now, you could step in the wrong way and your career's gone. Yeah. You're best standing off. You're best being a coward in that situation. And that's where policing has gone in this country.
I agree.
incentivised standing off and not dealing with the problem. That's sadly where we are.
Exactly. You mentioned about people's careers being gone, and we are going to now talk about one of this week's biggest stories. Yes, I am returning to Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield. They are facing calls to be sacked from their roles as presenters of This Morning after they were accused of jumping the queue to see the Queen's coffin last week. And the pair said that they were in Westminster Hall, quote, strictly for the purpose of reporting on the event. And they claimed that they would never jump a queue. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid to say that right here on Friday Night Feast, we've got some exclusive coverage of Phil and Holly up to their old tricks yet again.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry guys, not for us, sorry. We're just gonna skip the queue, is that all right? We've just gotta, hi guys, sorry. No, just gonna pay our respects quickly to the Queen. We've got a special pass to see the Queen because it's for journalism. It's just...
Sorry guys, you can't be here.
I know, no, normal people can't be here, but we're all right.
You haven't been notified.
Oh, we have, mate, we have. It's for the Queen, it's for journalism. Can we just through here? Can I just say it's for journalism? Do you mind if we cut in the queue? Do you mind if we just cut? We're all right to just cut in the queue. Well, we tried to pay our respects to the Queen, of course. I mean, how do you feel?
Did it? I was very upset we weren't allowed to, jump the queue.
No. I mean, this could be spun any which way, couldn't it? People might say this is disrespectful, that we don't care about all these people queuing. But in fact, should we speak to people in the... I just wanted to check, do you mind if we just hop in front? No, I'll just hop in front, is that all right?
You go for it.
See, this is it. It's for journalism. Hi, mate, sorry. It's just for... We're just filming a documentary about the royal family.
Yeah.
And we basically was told that we don't have to queue up with normal people because they're plebs.
Look, so... If you have tickets, you can come into the building, have obviously with the camera equipment, you can't.
Okay.
Obviously with these masks as well, you can't really do that either. And also talking to people.
What mask?
Cancel us, mate, cancel us.
No, it's just that we understand that most people have got to queue up for ages to get in and have a ticket and whatever, but we're not normal people.
Is this
we're better than
joke that you guys got going on right now?
We're better than all of these people here. We just wanted to pay our respects to the Queen.
Look, guys, I'm sure this is all fun and games and all joke, but this can't happen today, okay?
Okay, all right, thank you.
I do wish you luck with whatever you'll do.
All right, thank you, mate. Cheers, take care. All right, we didn't quite get in, but at least we don't have to stand in line with normal people, right? I mean, that would be horrendous. Holly, can you imagine standing in line with people?
I just couldn't. I have things to do, I'm better than everyone else.
Yeah. Maybe next time. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to set the record straight on this. What you saw there was not me trying to jump the queue into Madame Tussauds. I was there as a journalist and as a broadcaster to bring you, the great unwashed, an insight into the VIP world that I live in. My magic pass allows me to tell you what it's like, really, to have money and the power to get in and pay my respects to a waxwork of the Queen. So please, please, please don't lecture me about needing to stand around for hours with plebs like you. Why should I run the risk of bumping into the likes of David Beckham or Susanna Reid? At no stage did I break any rules because, as a very important person, I am, of course, above the rules. Right, now, for legal reasons, I'd just like to add that Philip and Holly did absolutely nothing wrong and are absolutely perfect people and indeed great role models for TV personalities and journalists everywhere. Right, OK, so Holly and Phil are still under huge pressure and a petition calling on ITV to sack them has more than 67,000 signatures. So is there any way back for these two? And to discuss this, I'm joined by the publicist and strategist, Mark Borkowski. Hey, how are you?
I'm very well, very amusing that was.
Thank you very much.
I'm staggered that there's still a queue going into Madame Tussauds.
Actually, to be honest with you, so were we. So were we. And when we first got there wasn't, so we had to hang around a bit. But anyway, is there any way back for Holly and Phil? Because the public backlash has been pretty mega.
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, 60,000 signatures isn't that big. I mean, that's the way I would spin it. But look, this is all David Beckham's fault, isn't it? I mean, we all know that that people can sort of use their power and influence to get in. This was a classic example of two people not feeling the mood of the nation. And, Bex decides to go through that pilgrimage and it changes the whole vibe around.
But is it like a lot of things, Mark? Is it the cover-up, though, that does for you? Because instead of just saying, OK, we got it wrong.
Really, and also the spin and various people. But this is more about what's going on below the waterline. This is a battle of agents. There's some toxicity around that sort of programme in terms of ex-presenters who might find themselves on other channels at the moment. But I think that this is about an uncoordination. will they ride it? That's the interesting thing, because the ultimate deciders on this obviously will be advertisers. If the advertisers have moved away from the cult of both Phil and Holly, then ITV will have a good look at it, because, you know, programs will be refreshed. It isn't the end. This will carry on because it's a great story. But this is about how more about Holly and how she doesn't sort of enjoy the same protection as Phil does, and that maybe has something to do with allegedly, I don't know, these are rumours spinning around, that she sort of dumped the agent that actually protected her, who now still represents Phil. I can certainly not comment on
So hang on a minute.
They
So there's some speculation, which of course you aren't allowed to comment on, but are now definitely about to, which is that potentially there could be Holly and Phil's agents at war, and that could rip apart TV's best husband and wife, for want of a better phrase.
Well, yes, that you know, there is certainly disruption. There are tectonic plates there, no doubt. But you know, you often see these huge social media kerfuffles. You always see these petitions being rolled up. You see this huge generation of sort of content and eyeballs and clickbait around a story. But I mean, I've been looking at many of these sort of kerfuffles for years, and do you know what? People can ride it if they've got a right team, if they can coordinate things, if they can maybe apologise or try and move the thing on. And we've seen, you know, that these have a dive in popularity, but people somehow come back to the top because they're good at what they do, they're popular, and all the people who are not moaning about them, who have still fallen in love with them, their fan base will grow to support them again. But I think this has more to run, but this, as I said, is clearly about the financial aspect of this. If advertisers run away from this morning, then they'll have... It does
beg the question, you know, when a certain individual who was on a slightly earlier ITV programme had, I think, potentially fewer people up in arms, maybe, then actually, you know, he was biffed, as it were. But Mark, thank you very much. Mark Bulkowski there, who is a internationally renowned publicist and strategist, talking about whether or not Holly and Phil can ride this one out. Aidan, I'll start with you. I mean, you live in the fast lane. Right? Aidan McGee joins me now. Aidan McGee, you know, you live in the fast lane. You wouldn't be seen dead in a queue, would you?
No, that's not true. No, I queue up with everybody else.
Do you?
But, yeah, I do think it's... joking aside, I do think it's a little bit of an overreaction. They jumped a queue, yeah, they lied about it afterwards. Is it the biggest offence in the world? Is it a reason to jump someone, to push someone out of the job?
Well, they would, of course, deny the fact that they jumped the queue or indeed lied about it.
Yeah,
but they didn't queue up, and then they didn't say...
No, true. Did you meet the woman with 2 penises, by the way, earlier this week?
No.
Madam Two Swords.
OK. Lovely stuff. Thank you very much. Aidan McGee. We'll get these now. What do you make of this? Now, I know that you're desperately aware... You are desperate to still appear on shows like This Morning, and so you wouldn't want to...
You're desperate. No, Holly and Phil are nice. I like that. They're all right. Look, I'm split. So when I queue for something myself, I'll queue. Happily get to the back.
Yeah.
If I'm working for a principal, I can't tell you the number of events and queues and various things I have pushed through for my principals.
Right.
So, really, I don't see a big deal about it. To be honest, if I'm moving a VIP through, then, yes, you know, people will get all upset and whiny and, you know, moany about it. I don't really care.
No.
I'll get my principal through.
Well, it's your job, though, isn't it? It's your job to
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. So I've barged my way to the front of lots of queues. People as important as you, Patrick. So next time you want to go out...
I bet you do it in a charming way, though, don't you?
No.
No, fair enough. Right, well, I want to know what you think, people. Do you think that Holly and Phil should be sacked? Do you think they should keep their job? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me as well, @gbnews. And if you're very lucky and you say incredibly nice things about me, I will read your message out a little bit later on in the show. But next up, it's a time for our big debate. After the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng unveiled his not-so-mini budget earlier today, I had one question for the great British public.
Do you want to pay more tax?
No, bloody don't.
Why not?
Because I'm a teacher and I didn't get my 5% thing.
Right, OK, fine. Do you think some people should pay more tax?
Yeah, probably.
Would you pay more tax if you lived there?
No.
Why not?
Because my money. I want to keep my money.
You want to keep your money? Thank you, sir. Do you want to pay more tax?
No.
Why not?
Because I pay enough.
Yeah.
I don't paid enough.
You feel like you've paid enough over the years?
Over the years, yeah.
Okay.
So,
should anyone be paying more tax, do you think?
no, I think the tax is fine at the moment. Yeah, absolutely fine at the moment.
What about some people say, oh, we need it to fund public services and stuff like that?
I get that. Maybe the richer pay more tax.
Do you want to pay more tax?
No one wants to pay more tax.
No. So are you happy? Have you seen anything about this new budget?
I've seen it. It's probably a little bit of rob Peter to pay Paul.